Well, we're getting near the end of now many months, a series of talks on the four foundations of mindfulness. And the way I've been somewhat talking about it is that in the way that this instruction is given by the Buddha in a text called the Discourse on the Four Foundations of Mindfulness, Satipatthana Sutta, there's a sense, or at least the way I read it, of it being a journey, a movement, an unfolding over time, a deepening. And that's often what happens in meditation. There's a evolving of meditation, a maturing of it, a deepening of it that goes on. And I want to give a few metaphors for this, or similes for this. And one of them is if you take a light bulb and maybe it's been covered with black, electrician's tape or duct tape or something, and you turn the light on, the bulb might go on, but there's no light that's going to come out of that bulb. But if you slowly begin peeling off the black tape, then first you get a little bit of light coming out, and then a little bit more and more, and eventually, when all the tape is off, the light bulb radiates its light out, and the light fills the whole room. Before that, the room was dark, maybe. And so there's a movement there of slowly taking off the tape, and slowly more and more of the light bulb is revealed, and more light shines out. And in some ways, that's what goes on in the mind. That we have the equivalent of tape, or things that hinder the light of the mind, the clarity of the mind. And the meditation practice slowly helps us to shed that. And so there's a lot of clarity that arises. And some people actually refer very explicitly to a sense of light that they almost see, kind of inner light or something that comes as the practice deepens. Another metaphor that's used a lot, and maybe you've heard of this, is that of a still forest pond. If it wasn't still, and maybe the cattle or the animals ran through this small pond, then it stirs up all the mud, and mud is in solution, and you can't see, and the pond is not clear. But if you leave the pond alone to be still, the mud settles down, and the pond becomes clear. So there's a process of, if you leave it alone, it settles, and clarity arises. So the same thing with meditation. There's something important about meditation, learning to leave the mind alone, but radically alone. That allows things to settle, and then clarity arises. And let me see, I had one more metaphor I wanted to use, but maybe it's gone. It's been shed. And, oh yes, that was it. Now it came back. And that is, if you go backpacking, and with a heavy pack, you're hiking along with a heavy pack, and you've hiked for many miles, hiking up a steep mountain to the weight of the pack, and then you get to maybe the top of the mountain, and you take the pack off, suddenly you feel lighter. It's almost like you can lift, you feel like you're lifted or kind of floating almost, and it's so much easier to go. And if you start walking without the pack, if you wear a pack, my wife's been hiking for many days. She's doing what's called the Pacific Crest Trail. And there was one section of the trail for a day where she did it without her backpack. And she said it felt like she was flying, and that she went along. And so so meditation is like that. You're dropping a burden, the weight that we carry. We've carried a lot of tension and struggles and burdens and responsibilities that we carry in this kind of mindscape that we have. And when meditation helps us to drop that, something shifts and changes, and we feel different. We feel lighter and more upright. And sometimes in meditation there's an upward movement of the body as it straightens out, with the burdens of our life begin settling, and we get focused. In this last section of the four foundations of mindfulness, the fourth foundation, that of the Dhammas, the laws or the patterns or the truths that are revealed in this practice, begins by talking about those things which darken the light bulb, or fill the pond with mud, or the heavy weight that we carry. And these are called the 5 hindrances. And so part of the deepening of the practice is to learn how to be wise about these, see them that they're there, these forces in the mind, and have them quiet down or settle down or, go out of solution or get peeled off the light bulb. And these 5 are preoccupations, the strong preoccupations of the mind, with desire. It's often called sensual desire, for comfort and sensual pleasures of every type. There is ill will, resentment, hostility, anger that we might have. And then there's a lethargy and resistance. So we might be caught up in a kind of strategy of kind of just resistance or lethargy or giving up or kind of despairing, and the energy just drops from our system. Or there might be the opposite, that there's a lot of restlessness, agitation, regrets, that we're kind of stirred up and agitated, that we're preoccupied with. Or we're preoccupied with doubt. Those are the 5 that the Buddha listed. And these are quite strong. And as these settle down in the mind, no longer operating, things begin shifting in our mind and body. There's a lot more clarity, because these hindrances, preoccupations, obscure the clarity of the mind. There's much more feeling of lightness and softness, because these hindrances tend to be hard and heavy in the kind of on the mind, the heart. And so there starts being a shift. And that shift moves in the direction of what the topic is today, which is called the 7 factors of awakening. These are 7 states of mind that begin to bubble up, to surface, to radiate when these hindrances abate. And these are kind of like the initial rewards of Buddhist meditation, because they feel so sublime, so wonderful when they become strong. And they are, so these 7 very beneficial states, sometimes they're considered kind of like the crown jewels of Buddhism. If anything, there's like the treasures. They're literally called sometimes gems or treasures. And so you go to a museum to see the crown jewels of a country, and you go to your own mind to see your own crown jewels, your own gems. They're considered that precious. So there's 7 of them, and the first is mindfulness itself. The second, and mindfulness here is not a practice we do, but a state of mind that we obtain, or that arises or is there. The second is usually in English is translated as investigation, which gives the sense of a lot of work, and now I have to investigate. And I'll just say more about it later. The third is energy or effort, engagement. We engage in the practice. The fourth is joy. The 5th is tranquility. The 6th is concentration. And the 7th is equanimity. And these 7 states, I can imagine some of you have never heard this list before, and so maybe the words don't mean much for you, and they're kind of dry, and maybe uninteresting, and maybe even slightly bad news. Not doesn't excite you. Like, wow, that's great. Energy, great. Let's put energy in. Oh my God, more energy. I've been busy all day. I'm exhausted. In the time of the Buddha, there were he had a monastic who was sick, and so the Buddha went to visit him, and this monk was a meditation monk, so he knew these states, and so the Buddha basically did kind of a guided meditation to evoke these 7 states of awakening, 7 states, 7 factors of awakening, enlightenment. In them, and the monk kind of, because he was so familiar with them, the Buddha kind of could evoke them by naming them, and then he got well. That's kind of a nice story. But in fact, when these things are quite strong, people who have this experience of having these 7 factors of awakenings coursing through the body, it feels very healing. And I felt them. It felt kind of like this, almost, the only way I could describe this energy or this vibration or sensations that were flow through my body was that this felt amazingly healing, the sensation and feeling. The mind feels very sane when the 7 factors of awakening are mature and strong. So like maybe the sanest or the healthiest the mind can be in. And they're not so much things we have to do, but rather things that we allow for. We set the conditions for them, and then they mature and they arise. And this is the kind of this wonderful interplay in meditation practice between what we do and what we allow. And some people don't understand that balance. And so to find that balance is part of it. Some people here, you're supposed to, focus on your breathing, and so they put all their effort into, staying, getting concentrated, and they get a headache. And other people think, you're supposed to just sit there and do nothing, and they just kind of sit back and they fall asleep. It's a combination of two things. And the example would be if maybe you're stressed from a busy day and preoccupied with many concerns, and you feel like you want to take a little break from it all and get refreshed. And so maybe you listen to music. Maybe you put headsets on and you close your eyes, lay on the floor, and listen to the music. And part of you is really focused on the music. That's what you set yourself up to do, is to focus on the music. But if you're going to enjoy the music, you don't focus too hard, right? You're there, fully there, but you're not going to work at it exactly. At the same time, there's a letting go of the concerns of the day. And these two things are happening together. We're letting go of some of the doings we had, and we're still doing something, which is we're listening to the music. So in meditation practice, we're doing something. We're bringing some focus perhaps to the present moment, bring focus to if you're using the breath as a focus, bring focus to the breath, and then tuning into the music of the breath, to the rhythm of the breath, to the sensations, that's where we can we focus on. But at the same time, you don't want to try too hard, because that just messes things up, like listening too hard to music. But you also you want to let go of all the other things that get in the way, the thoughts of the day, the concerns, the preoccupations. And so these two things work together. And the letting go creates mental space, or heart space, or physical space inside of us. It's kind of like we're getting rid of the clutter so something can grow and develop inside. And what grows and develops are these 7 factors of awakening. As we begin letting go of the hindrances, we let go of our preoccupations. So part of the reason to talk about the 7 factors of awakening is so meditators can begin to recognize them when they arise, as opposed to, here's one more set of things I have to memorize, these 7 things, and I have to do them. And this Buddhist meditation, I thought I was just sitting there and relaxing and de-stressing, but they give us all these lists of things to do, and I'm just getting confused. So I apologize for that. But the idea is to do less. But one of the ways to do that is to begin to recognize what begins to shift and change, to recognize the unfolding of the journey of meditation, to be able to track and watch the shifts and changes in the mind, the heart, and the body as we sit down and do very little except be awake and be present. And then at some point to recognize the awakening or the arising of these 7 factors of awakening. And that's one of the instructions the Buddha gave here. Recognize, and it's the arising of the factors of awakening that have not yet arisen. Or say it differently. Recognize the unarisen factors of awakening when they arise. So it's just recognizing they're coming. It doesn't say crank them up. Do them better. So it's a remarkable process of how this, and then recognizing creates more space, and the recognizing allows this amazing process to go on inside. When it started happening to me, I was just kind of in awe of what this mind can do and what the process of this meditation can unfold, and that these natural, beautiful, powerful natural processes, like the weather or the wind or tectonic plates shifting and moving. I don't know what to want to compare it to. Looking into the Grand Canyon. Wow. To look into your own, into your inner life and watch it unfold and open, and these forces come alive and sit there. It's quite a phenomenal experience too, of appreciation and valuing. And so to recognize these arising. So mindfulness practice is a practice of recognition, the practice of bringing attention to what's going on. Mindfulness practice, that recognition, that noticing and naming and coming back and being present, allows for a state of awareness to begin developing, clear awareness. What's distinct from mindfulness practice is mindfulness. Mindfulness being a state of awareness that's able to abide and rest in the present moment and experience what occurs, what comes and goes in the present moment. So the ability to get out of the way enough to keep recognizing what's happening in the present moment, to get out of the way, to no longer get caught up in the past and the future, allows there to a surfacing, the bubbling up or clearing the field for a field of awareness, present moment awareness. And that feeling of present moment awareness is quite delicious when it's established and you're here and you're not wandering off a lot, and it feels so good to be here. Wow. And then when you're here and present and aware, then there's a natural process of seeing things more clearly. There's less obscurations, and so we start seeing more clearly. And what in English we call investigation, in the ancient world, it literally means to distinguish or differentiate what's happening here, to tease apart what's happening. So, for example, I might be sitting here feeling some physical pain. In fact, I am. I sprained my ankle a couple of weeks ago, and it still hurts a little bit. And if I press it a certain way, so I'm pressing it the wrong way right now, and kind of a little bit. So it hurts a little bit down there, my ankle, and so I can feel the pain, and I can feel that the mind has some preoccupation with it. So I can see those two are happening in the present moment. There's the pain, there's the feeling of the pain. Am I doing the right thing with it right now and checking it out? So these are two different things. I can notice that I have a little bit of delight about focusing on the pain as I'm sitting here, because it's kind of delightful to kind of feel present and connected. Maybe it feels kind of odd to say that around pain, but in fact that's what I feel. So it's not like I'm investigating, looking for these things, but as I sit here and just open to the field, I start seeing these different pieces of it that I wouldn't have seen if I hadn't taken this little pause in the talk to do this exercise. I would have gone on and kind of, this would have been receded into the background. But I start seeing more clearly the terrain. I might see that I have my mind begins going off on a thought train about it. It didn't happen, but I can imagine, oh, this means that they're probably going to amputate tomorrow. This is going to be terrible, and the mind goes off that way, or maybe, whatever, And so if you really sit back and really can start to be clear, we start what can initially seem like a big buzzing confusion of anarchy and chaos of our experience becomes less and less chaotic as we begin seeing distinctions until such a point where we see things in their simplest manifestation. And one of the things we're looking for in mindfulness is quieting the thinking mind enough, the conceptual mind that has stories and ideas and plans and reactions to what's going on. So we're not seeing our experience through the lens of those ideas, but rather we're seeing things in their simplest possible manifestation. So I can feel, I could be feeling my pain in my ankle, but mostly what it is, I might be caught up in worry about what it means, and I'll never be able to walk again, and I can't afford a doctor, and this is a terrible life, and why was I, ended up like this? And it's just a big buzz of confusion. I can't really see the details at all. But if I relax all those thoughts and concerns, and I drop down and be very quiet and peaceful, the simplest manifestation of that pain in and of itself has no worry in it, has no ideas of the future, no ideas of doctors. They're just a kind of sharp little searing heat and vibration that feels a little bit between hot and cold. That's what I feel right now. And so just the simplest manifestation of it. And as I tune into these things really carefully, I see that actually it's not a single sensation. It's a series of sensations that are like a dance that come into existence and vibrate and dance around, move around, come and going. And it becomes a whole different phenomena than they're going to amputate my foot tomorrow, and all those concerns. That's just like a gross, very high level kind of interpretation of the event. So I don't know if this was the best example to give you for what I'm trying to say. I apologize for that. But it's just what came up. It's, when I stopped to pay attention, notice myself, that's what I noticed. So so as we have developed this clarity, what arises is the ability to start seeing the distinction, the simple manifestation of the different things, and they're not all lumped together in a big lump. That's interesting. And there's a way in which it's very interesting to start experiencing life directly behind the veil of all the thoughts, ideas, concerns, plans, memories that kind of make it all confusing, make it all kind of murky and fill the pond with mud. And as it gets clearer and clearer, there's a tendency for the mind to start getting interested, to be wanting to engage. And there's a feeling of health, a healthy way of engaging. I don't know if any of you have ever done something like going hiking or do some exercise or something, and at some point something clicks in, and it just feels like the system just loves doing the hiking. It's just like just going and going, and it just, you don't want to stop because the system is engaged. So no one has to tell you, you go out there and hike. I'm hiking. Hike harder. Or work at it. At some point it feels like the naturalness of walking takes over, and we're engaged, and it feels like it's the easiest thing to do. It's like you're flying maybe or something. It feels it can. And so sometimes there's a way of being engaged where the engagement takes over. It's not us doing it, but we're being done. So that can happen in many areas. People playing music can report that sometimes. People, different things we do, and it feels like the engagement, something is taking over, but we're being done too. So same thing happens in meditation. At some point, the engagement of mindfulness, of attention and recognition, is not something that is self-consciously done, but it's something that clicks, and we just want to be engaged. And this is like one of the best things going. And it's better than going back to the old way, which was thinking about amputated feet and doctors. Just like what's so much better just to be in the simplicity of it all. As that interest and engagement develops, it seems like the way that our psychophysical system is created, when there's a kind of continuous focus of attention and engagement, it tends to release good chemicals in our system. And it tends to kind of make everything work in harmony in such a way that joy arises, certain kind of delight and happiness, and usually in Buddhism we call it joy, that arises. And again, it's something that arises, and the Buddha's instruction was, when unarisen joy arises, when joy which has not yet arisen, it's no longer, and it hasn't been there yet. When that comes, this meditative joy, recognize that it's there. As this joy factor develops, it can be quite intense sometimes. At some point, as the letting go process, the deepening process, the focusing practice continues, there starts to be a wonderful shift into tranquility. And this is a very sublime feeling. It can be, it tends to be a very physical feeling, embodied sense of tranquility that might be spreading through the chest or the torso. In me, it's very torso-based when this tranquility comes into place. A deep kind of glowing feel of peace and softness and serenity. And it's not something, what's remarkable, as I keep saying, is it's not something I'm doing, but I'm being done too. It's arising out of the process of it all, out of the deepening of the practice. And then that tranquility gives rise or supports the deepening of concentration, a steadiness of mind, the ability of the mind to be still, settled, steady, composed, and unified. The mind now is completely involved in the process of meditation. It's not interested in anything else. It's kind of like this is the most delightful and pleasant place to be, and all the different capacities of the mind seemingly are absorbed and involved in the present moment of doing this one thing. And I think we know that in other endeavors besides meditation, some people find tremendous joy and delight in getting concentrated in some activity they do. Sometimes in sports or music or art, or you just really get absorbed in something and do one thing really well, and people get kind of high. The first time this happened to me in my life was something that I told my kids about it, and you'll understand that they did not appreciate this. And maybe it was not a successful parenting moment, but the first time I really noticed, for me, this kind of joy arising from being absorbed in something was taking final exams in college. I would study and study and study and learn all this material that was in there, stayed in my memory for about 24 hours. But it was long enough for the test. And then I would sit down and I'd get completely absorbed in the test. And I wasn't thinking about getting absorbed. The world was just a test. Everything else I could think about disappeared. And when I left those exams after 2 hours or 3 hours or whatever how long it took, I would go out and I'd just be like stoned. It was like a natural high. It was like so wonderful. Like my mind was so clear, so empty. I felt so much. I wasn't happy about the exam, but I was just happy, and so just being absorbed. So and then when that settles down and we move into this tranquility, it's beautiful, and then we get concentrated. And the concentration is, I think I got confused here because concentration brings more joy. And so there's a whole process of deepening and deepening. But as concentration deepens, at some point it gets into a very tranquil place, very peaceful place. And then it moves into the deepest place, and this is considered the most sublime or the most satisfying state of these 7 factors of awakening, kind of the pinnacle of meditation practice before the experience of enlightenment. And this is, and the word that's used here, if you're kind of uninitiated to all this, can seem kind of uninteresting, or now you're talking about being aloof, or it's dry, or it has no emotional valence at all. So why is that interesting? The word is equanimity, and how can that be? I think of it as one of the best emotions you could have, most pleasant, enjoyable, happy, satisfying emotions you have. It's not plain, it's not dull, it's not aloof, but the mind is it's like the mind is at its best because the mind is not reacting to anything. A reactive mind is agitated, a reactive mind is caught, a reactive mind is afflicted in a certain kind of way. But this beautiful mind we have can operate quite well without reacting to anything. And to learn to trust that we don't have to be doing and reacting and fixing and defending, and all the reactions go away. The mind becomes still and even and quiet. And so things can happen, but it doesn't create any waves in the mind. The mind doesn't get agitated whatsoever. So this deep equanimity. So these 7 factors of awakening arise as meditation deepens, arise as the hindrances and preoccupations fall away. It's helpful to recognize when they arise, because it's the recognition that kind of creates the space to allow them to grow, or makes the space that allows for the continuing deepening or unfolding of the journey of the mindfulness meditation that keeps going deeper and deeper. And then it comes to equanimity. And the value of equanimity is not to be equanimous for its own sake. The reason why it's held up as being so important is that because the mind is not reacting to anything, it makes possible for the mind to have it makes available to the mind 2 very important things. One is the mind then becomes very soft, very malleable, very kind of relaxed, whereas when it's reactive, it gets tense and held and kind of tight or hard. So the mind, you can feel the mind getting softer and softer and softer, and so when the mind is most soft or most equanimous, that's where it's the easiest for the mind to let go further. But if the mind is tight, it's difficult to let go. So that's one. And the second is that an equanimous mind has no filters of ideas through which we're experiencing what's going on. And so we can have a deeper insight into what's going on moment to moment that is normally not available to people in a more busy conceptual thinking mind. And to be able to drop down to a very, very primal level in the mind, to see the moment-to-moment arising and passing of experience, is a phenomenal stepping stone for liberation. And that's what we'll talk about next week when we talk about the final exercise, the final instructions, or the final description of this process that is given. It's usually referred to as the 4 Noble Truths. And so this state of equanimity is a setup for experiencing the 4 Noble Truths. So the 7 factors of awakening are not in instructions. This teachings here is not instructions of what to do, but rather instructions of what to recognize. And so that's why teachers like to teach them and help people get familiar with them and know what they're like. And by doing so, then when they occur, people can recognize them. So we have about 7 minutes left. And would you like to do a little guided meditation on the 7 factors of awakening? And I'll guide you through them in a rather innovative way. And you might not be able to, follow along, but that's okay. What I'm going to offer for each of the 7 factors of awakening is a single word to represent that factor. And as you hear this word, welcome that word into you in the way that maybe if you were stepping out of the cold and into the warmth of the sun, you might step forward, open your arms wide, your chest open and out to receive the warmth. So imagine that these words are kind of like the warmth of the sun, and you let them settle in or absorb into you, and see what resonates, see what opens in you, see if there's something inside that corresponds to these words that is kind of a good thing or satisfying, something inside that, yes, this is good. So to begin, though, you might take a few long, slow, deep breaths. And part of the value of taking deep breaths at the beginning of meditation is to feel connected to your body, to know that you have a body, and to inhabit your body, to be here with your body. And then letting your breathing return to normal. And maybe feel your body. If there's any obvious places that you can relax. Relax around the face, the shoulders. Maybe you can soften your belly. And maybe as you exhale, you can relax your thinking mind. Perhaps even to a very small degree. Perhaps you can let your thoughts either slip, fall away, drift away like a thought bubble, or let your thoughts recede into the background. So for the mindfulness factor of awakening, I offer you the word here. Here. Here in this body, in this place, this time. Step forward into here. And for the investigation factor of awakening, the word is this, just this. Here, just with this, whatever it might be that appears. This. And then for the effort factor of awakening, the word is yes. Yes. To being present here with this. And for the joy factor, not quite a word, but it's the sound, ah. And that word you might quietly say to yourself as you exhale, ah. Here with this, yes, ah. And then for the tranquility factor, it's a simple word, relax. okay. And then for the concentration factor of awakening, the word is steady. Let yourself be steady in the middle of this here. Steady. And then for the equanimity factor, the word or this little phrase is, it's okay. It's okay. Here, whatever this is, it's okay. Here, this, yes, relax, steady, it's okay. And if this little meditation has given you even a teeny little glimpse of what these 7 factors might be for you in your experience, may those glimpses be a little seed that can keep growing for you and developing. So these 7 factors of awakening become your companions and your friends and your supporters. And you'll find that they're much better friends than the hindrances. Even though people don't think this way, functionally, people tend to trust the hindrances and preoccupations. If we didn't trust them, we wouldn't spend so much time in them. And the shift that happens in this practice is we begin trusting the 7 factors of awakening more than the hindrances. And that's a great thing, to trust these things. So, but you have to know how to recognize them. So may that recognition become yours. Thank you.